At 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, Julian stood at the head of a sunlit conference table in downtown Seattle. His hands were cold, his throat was dry, and he was currently 6 minutes into explaining a single staircase design to a room full of silent executives. He could feel himself losing them. The chief developer was checking his watch. The lead investor was leaning back, arms crossed. So Julian did what he always did when he felt nervous. He kept talking. He explained the structural engineering, the acoustic dampening, the origin of the timber, the 4 alternative layouts. He discarded, desperately throwing facts at the room, hoping one of them would stick. 10 minutes later, the developer interrupted him with 5 short words. "We'll let you know, Julian." He didn't get the contract, and as he walked back to his car carrying his foam core architectural boards, Julian had the same crushing thought he'd had after every failed pitch. "I'm just not cut out for the business side of this." Julian was a 31-year-old associate architect who lived for the craft. Give him a blank CAD canvas and a complex zoning code, and he could design spaces that felt effortless, elegant, and deeply human. On paper, his work was brilliant. In person, presenting that work felt like standing trial. Every major project pitch felt like an insurmountable hurdle. He assumed the principal partners at his firm had an innate charisma, a natural, booming authority that he simply wasn't born with. Because Julian felt like an imposter in high-stakes rooms, he compensated with sheer volume. When a client asked a simple question like, "Why did you choose concrete for the facade?" Julian wouldn't give a simple answer. He would give a 15-minute lecture on thermal mass, local supply chains, and design history, fearing that if he stopped talking, they would realize he didn't belong in the room. The hidden problem wasn't his architecture. It was his communication friction. By trying to cover every possible objection before it was even raised, he was overloading his clients with cognitive friction. Instead of feeling confident in his expertise, his clients felt confused, overwhelmed, and defensive. The consequences began to compound. His firm started passing him over for client, facing lead roles, assigning those presentations to junior architects who had half his technical skill but twice his social ease. During team review meetings, Julian began staying quiet altogether, terrified that opening his mouth would trigger another nervous rant. His career was completely stalled. The gap between how good his work was and how well he could pitch it was destroying his professional confidence. Which leads to the question so many quiet, technical professionals face. Why does talking about our own work feel so insanely difficult, even when we know we're good at what we do? Why do we freeze up, over-explain, or ramble the moment the spotlight turns toward us? Is social influence really just an innate trait you're born with? Or is it a system you can design? Julian tried the standard advice. He read generic articles on building executive presence. He tried practicing rigid public speaking scripts in front of his mirror. He tried forcing himself to use aggressive body language and maintain relentless, unblinking eye contact. It was a disaster. During his next client meeting, trying to remember his artificial gestures while memorizing a script made him freeze entirely. He sounded rehearsed, stiff, and even more insecure. The turning point came during a lunch meeting with a retired senior partner at his firm named Marcus. Julian watched Marcus handle a notoriously difficult property developer. The developer brought up a massive budget complaint. Julian braced himself, expecting Marcus to jump in with a defensive 10-minute explanation. Instead, Marcus did something that blew Julian's mind. He listened. He nodded slowly. He stayed completely quiet for 3 full seconds after the developer finished speaking. And then Marcus said just one sentence: "We can adjust the materials to hit your budget, or we can keep the custom timber and cut the build phase by 2 weeks. Which trade-off works best for your timeline?" The developer paused, picked option 2, and the meeting was over in 5 minutes. No debate, no defensiveness. After lunch, Julian asked Marcus how he handled high-stakes pushback without breaking a sweat. Marcus introduced him to two core behavioral concepts: strategic silence and choice architecture. Julian, Marcus said, when you over-explain, you think you're displaying competence, but what the client hears is anxiety. You're forcing them to process your internal panic, instead of making a clear decision. Julian realized he had to redesign how he structured his communication. 1. Choice architecture. The two-option rule. Instead of asking clients open-ended questions like, "What do you think of the whole design?" which creates decision overload, he framed choices cleanly. Option A prioritizes natural light. Option B maximizes floor space. Which direction fits your vision? 2. The 3-second pause. Whenever a client asked a question or raised an objection, Julian forced himself to count to 3 silently before responding. This lowered his heart rate and stopped his instinct to ramble. 3. Leaving blank space. Instead of filling every silence with words, he allowed gaps. He learned that silence forces the other person to process information and speak their true concerns. Julian put the framework to the test 2 weeks later with a commercial real estate client. Early in the pitch, the client pushed back hard on Julian's layout for the lobby, calling it impractical. Habit took over. Panic spiked in Julian's chest. He counted. 1, 2, 3. He didn't get defensive. He didn't cite 10 architectural studies. He simply looked at the board member, used choice architecture, and said, "The atrium is our primary light well for the inner offices. We can keep it to reduce operational lighting costs over 10 years, or we can enclose it now to save on initial construction. How would you like to balance those costs?" The board member sat back, thought for a moment, and said, "Let's keep the light well." Over the next 6 months, Julian stopped trying to be the most talkative person in the room. He became the clearest. He won 3 major firm pitches, earned his senior promotion, and realized that quiet clarity will always carry more weight than desperate authority. If you find yourself over-explaining, anxious, or losing control during important conversations, here are the key takeaways. 1. Why do I ramble when I get nervous? Because your brain misinterprets silence or questioning as a threat to your credibility. You over-explain to protect yourself, but it actually signals anxiety to others. 2. How do I lead conversations without sounding pushy? Use choice architecture. Stop asking open-ended questions that trigger decision fatigue. Present 2 clear, framed options and let the other person choose. You don't need a loud personality to command respect in a room. You don't need endless charm or aggressive posture. You just need to get out of your own way, drop the over-explaining, and give your ideas enough quiet space to speak for themselves. If Julian's journey resonated with you, click the subscribe button to join the Focus Effect for more grounded, psychology-backed systems for your life and career. And if you want to deepen your understanding of communication dynamics, influence, and decision-making systems, check out our curated reading list. I've put together our top book recommendations in one link right here in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.